Have you ever walked down an old hallway and felt a sudden chill? A sense that one of the doors you just passed wasn't quite right? Today, we re-unlocking the story behind one of the internet's oldest and most unsettling hospital legends, the tale of room 733. The story begins in a building that had a dual identity. By day, it was a busy college dormitory, but parts of it were repurposed to serve as a temporary clinic, a place of healing and recovery. Corridors that echoed with the laughter of students during the day fell silent at night, filled only with the quiet hum of medical equipment and the soft footsteps of the nursing staff. But among the dozens of occupied rooms, one remained sealed, a permanent scar on the otherwise functional floor, room 733. Unlike the other doors, which opened and closed with the rhythm of hospital life, this one was welded shut. Thick, industrial weld marks sealed the frame, a crude and desperate measure to ensure whatever was inside would never get out. Or perhaps to keep anyone from getting in. The official records were suspiciously blank, but the unofficial stories, the whispers shared during the lonely hours of the night shift, told a much darker tale. Nurses who had worked at the clinic for years swore they heard things. It would start around 3 in the morning, the so-called witching hour. A faint, rhythmic sound. Footsteps, pacing back and forth from one end of the tiny, sealed room to the other. But that was impossible. The room hadn't been opened in decades. Who or what could be walking in there? Then there was the doorknob. Polished from years of no-nos, it would reportedly begin to turn, slowly and deliberately, without a sound, an agonizingly slow rotation, as if someone on the other side was patiently, methodically testing the lock, night after night, hoping that one day it would finally give way. More than one terrified nurse, making their rounds, froze in the hallway, watching the brass knob turn under the dim emergency lights, only for it to slowly rotate back into place. The clinic also served as a training ground for medical students, and they had their own chilling encounters with room 733. The students, often pulling all-nighters, would walk past the sealed door on their way to the study lounge. The door had a small, reinforced glass window, just a tiny pane for observation. Now dark and clouded with dust, but sometimes, if they glanced at it for just a second too long, they would see it. A shape. A dark silhouette pressed right up against the inside of the glass. It was tall and unnervingly still, a void in the darkness. Most would hurry past, their hearts pounding, dismissing it as a trick of the light, a reflection of their own tired minds. But the braver, or perhaps more foolish, students who dared to stop and stare noticed something truly disturbing. If you stood there and looked at the silhouette, it would eventually begin to move. If you shifted your weight, it would shift its weight. If you tilted your head, it would tilt its head. But its movements were all wrong. There was a delay, a sickening lag, like watching a video with a bad connection. It wasn't a reflection, it was a mimic. A broken, disjointed imitation of you, performed by the shadow in the window. The students who experienced this never made that mistake again. They learned to walk past room 733 with their eyes fixed firmly ahead. So, what was the origin of this story? What happened in that room to warrant it being sealed like a tomb? The legend, pieced together from fragmented accounts and hushed rumors, points to a single patient. Years ago, before the room was sealed, it was part of a small psychiatric ward housed within the clinic. The patient in room 733 was a young woman suffering from a severe psychosis. Her obsession was a presence she called the other. She claimed the other lived in reflections. It started with mirrors. She would scream, begging the staff to cover them, saying a twisted version of herself was staring back, whispering terrible things. Then it was any reflective surface, a polished countertop, a water glass, the dark screen of a television. But his favorite place, she said, was the window. She insisted that her reflection was no longer her own. It was the other, trapped in the glass, and it wanted to switch places. The staff tried to reassure her, treating her claims as symptoms of her illness. But her terror was genuine, and it was escalating. She would spend hours staring at the window, sometimes arguing with her reflection, other times pleading with it. One night, the entire floor was jolted awake by her screams. They were different this time. Not of fear, but of pure, unadulterated agony. Staff rushed to room 733. The screaming stopped as abruptly as it began. When they forced the door open, they found the room in disarray. Furniture was overturned, but the young woman was lying silently in the center of the floor. Her eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. Her neck was snapped, broken at an impossible angle. The coroner's report was inconclusive, but the attending nurses said it looked as if she had been seized by an unseen force, lifted into the air, and violently shaken until her neck broke. The next morning, under direct orders from a panicked administration, a maintenance crew arrived. They didn't just lock the door, they welded it shut, erasing room 733 from the hospital's active roster. They hoped that by sealing the room, they could seal away the horror that happened within it. They were wrong. The presence, the other, never left. In fact, it seemed to become a permanent fixture of the room. To this day, long after the clinic was decommissioned and the building reverted to being just a dormitory, the stories persist. Custodians and security guards who patrol the now quiet 7th floor still report the faint sound of footsteps from behind the welded door. They still see the doorknob make its nightly, futile attempt to turn, and the silhouette in the window is still there, waiting, watching. Anyone who passes by is warned not to look, but curiosity is a powerful force. And everyone who shares this story, from the old nurses to the now graduated medical students, agrees on one final, terrifying warning. If you are ever walking down that hallway, and you make the mistake of looking into the window of room 733, you might see the silhouette begin to mimic you. But if you see its featureless face turn towards you, and if that dark void of a head ever pulls back into what looks like a smile,